Hair looks good.
I definitely think your hair does look good.
Thank you.
And we're live. Hey, everyone out there. We don't have to compete with Joe Biden's speech, I noticed. So that's good because I don't know why anybody would be here watching us. So anyway.
Yeah, well, people like us.
Absolutely. I hope so anyway. So welcome to the Unready Room. I'm Dan Gunther. This is Brandy Jackala, and we're here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, Forget Me Not, episode 4 of season 3. And I think that's pretty much all that happened this week, right? I'm pretty
that's
sure.
all that happened. Nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
Nothing important going on.
I feel like there was something, but I'm sure it'll come to me. So.
Yeah, you're going to have to be the one that thinks that because I got nothing.
Yeah. No. So hello to everybody out there. Hello to the regulars I see popping up in the chat already. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, of course, to everybody who's watching us later, not live. We appreciate that as well. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So Brandy, I'm just going to take a minute and ask, how are you doing?
I am feeling like I can breathe for the first time in about 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I understand that.
I'm a bit tired, but it's a good tired.
Right.
It's a very, I feel, like my legacy is secure sort of tired,
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Well, how are you, Dan?
I'm good. Tired as well. Yeah. No, I feel good. Feel good. Happy to be here to talk about Star Trek. So
Same.
as usual, it's usually it's like this is kind of a nice break from everything else. Today it's like a nice little cherry on top of a pretty good day. So
indeed.
Yeah. Excellent. So Forget Me Not. We have this new episode, and it kind of continues on pretty much immediately from last week's episode, in which we met Adira, a human joined with a Trill symbiont, who kind of is one of the big focuses of this episode. So I'm trying to think of how I want to structure this discussion, because I feel like a linear outline of the plot is kind of like, yeah, we've done that, right?
Yeah, this is an episode in 2 parts. We have the Adira story, and we have the story of the crew. And so I feel like it would behoove us to just take one of those and talk that entire thing through, and then talk the other thing through. That's, I feel, is going to be less choppy, I guess is the best word.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to say, let's start with what I would say is the A plot, Adira and dealing with this Trill symbiont in the past lives and this trip to Trill, which, let's start there, because I think visiting a Federation member world in this new future era, it's really interesting because it feels like we're exploring unknown places, even though we're exploring places that we've been before in the Star Trek universe, because it's brand new.
Yeah, but they're not Federation members.
No, they're not, which is interesting. And yeah,
never joined the Federation.
Nope. They're no longer associated at all with the Federation. The Federation has left. They're gone, right? So I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, we get Trill. It doesn't look purple like Jadzia Dax said it did in that one episode, but that's okay. I'll forgive them that. It's a minor quibble.
It's been 1,000 years. I think it's okay for it to be not exactly as it was.
That's my very, very, very nitpicky side coming out, which honestly, when I bring up stuff like that, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't take me out of the episode. I'm just like, I like to go like, actually, in the third
You have
season episode of Deep Space Nine,
you have to go all
purple.
reply guy on us? I'm just kidding. You're not a reply guy, not even close.
No, I like to put on that hat sometimes, but just as a joke. Like I don't care. I don't.
Yeah.
But
well, there's a big difference between what you do and what trolls do. See, because you're coming from a place of, oh, I saw this episode and this is what happened, and so therefore, it comes from knowledge. It doesn't come from yucking somebody's yum or tearing somebody down. So
exactly,
it's a very, very different thing.
Absolutely. So yeah, what did you think about? And there's some interesting questions raised. Of course, Burnham, I think, puts it best when she says, after all these years, is Trill still peaceful? Like, do we know? What do you think about this visit to Trill and, the kind of questions that are lingering as they approach?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have been kind of given a traumatic experience with Earth, and so I feel like everywhere they go, it's not going to start out well.
Mm-hmm.
So it may seem like that on the surface, but something's going to go wrong, and that's kind of what happens here, because they don't like that Adira has the tall symbiont, and there are some who want to rip it out of her. But as far as just going down to the planet, like, all of those shots made it feel very TNG, all the greenery, the fish that was leaping in and out of the water and then flies off. And just, it felt a bit, well, not a bit, it felt a lot TNG. Probably the most TNG that this series has ever felt, which is not a complaint at all.
Oh, for sure.
And, it's a hopeful meeting with the Trill, and then it goes horribly wrong, and can't say that I was surprised.
Yeah, there's some issues, like you said, for sure. Little aspects of this that I liked, that like nice little touches. The building that we see in those shots has that same style that Ezri Dax's mother had on the planet they were living in when she had the mine there. I can't remember off the top of my head the name of the planet, but the episode was Prodigal Daughter in season 7 of DS9. So it's like, oh, nice touch. I just like, it was a nice touch, I really like that for sure. So Adira, she's accompanied to the surface by Michael Burnham, who is persuaded to take her along by Culber in a really nice scene. This is kind of going to cross over into both stories, but Culber in this episode, oh my God, he was great. Like, incredible.
My heart. I never had a favorite Doctor before, but now I do.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, see, I have such a hard time with the word favorite. I can't even touch that right now.
That's the thing. So do I. So when I say someone is my favorite, it's a big deal.
That's awesome. Yeah. So Burnham, like I said, accompanies Adira down to the surface, and their spots are all out of joint because she's not a human. Or sorry, she is a human. She's not a Trill. And like you said, there's the one guy who wants to rip it out of her, and the other guy that's, saying she might be actually the savior of all of us.
Guardian Z! Yeah! Love that guy.
Yeah, he was really cool. He seemed really familiar. I didn't really look up what I knew him from, but he seemed familiar somehow. I don't know.
He's also ripped. Did you see those arms? That dude works out.
Absolutely. Well, you're stirring those symbiont pools, right? I mean, that's tough work. The guy who wants to rip it out of her, he engineers this ambush, which Burnham handily gets out of. That was a nice little scene. And throughout all of this, I'm really liking Adira, and she has a really nice arc through this episode, and incredibly acted by Blue Del Barrio. Just really great stuff. So, you know, at the beginning, this character is unsure, and in a lot of ways, I feel like, I don't know, by the end of this episode, I'm feeling like she's going to be one of my most like fascinating characters in Star Trek. So much just built in potential with this character here.
Yeah. No, I agree with that completely. And Blue has a tough job to do in this episode because she's got to be, she's got to portray being scared and uncertain, and then like flipping a switch. Now she has all of these memories of all of these lives. And, not to skip ahead to the ending of that particular story, but when she comes out of the pool, just the expression on her face, you can see it on her face that she's carrying all of these memories within her, all of these souls, for lack of a better word. And it's just magnificent. She is amazing. Adira is amazing. Blue, who responds to they, them, they are amazing in this role. And just, wow.
Yeah, the whole way the character is carrying themselves, and it's a little bit it's a little bit of an easy metaphor, coming out of the water, reborn, and all that stuff, but it works. Like, there's a reason it's a stereotype in our culture. That imagery works, and I think it works really well in this case, where they go down into the symbiont pool, one person, and come out not another person, they come out 7 people or however many. And I just, it's played brilliantly. I think they do an incredible job here.
Yeah, the dress Adira is wearing very much reminded me of a Mormon baptism dress.
And that's funny because that's the exact same thought I had in the first trip to the caves of Makala in Deep Space Nine's season 3 episode Equilibrium. I still got it.
You got it.
And Jadzia had to wear something very similar when she went into the pools, and I had that same thought back then as well. So that's funny. Yeah. So let's talk about this whole journey into the pool, I guess, because the good guy Trill, the Guardian
Z,
takes them in there, but Adira gets pulled down and Burnham has to go in after, and we get this really interesting scene where she has to recall these memories that she's been presumably blocking or something like that of Gray. And this was exciting to see this character pairing here, because we've never had an explicitly transgender character in Star Trek before. It's groundbreaking. I'm just gonna say it. And this scene with her boyfriend Gray, as we mentioned, is incredible and so moving, and I'm assuming brought you to tears. Definitely brought you to tears.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of crying in this episode.
Yeah.
And and fun fact that no one will care about but me, but Ian Alexander was born in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, didn't stay here, but was born here. So good for you for getting out of Utah, Ian. Good for you.
I do have to say, I love the discussion going on in the chat of who is everybody's favorite doctor. I'm enjoying this.
I started a trend.
Yep, it's wonderful. We've got some votes. We have one vote for Dr. Ta'ana,
nice,
which is awesome. Some floxes, some love for the doctor too. Just
of course,
the doctor. Absolutely awesome. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. But yeah, Gray Tall. We learn, of course, the symbiont that Adira is carrying is the same one, and we see this tragic accident where Gray perishes, and the symbiont has to be transferred to Adira. And immediately after that, this amazing scene, and this is where I was really getting emotional, where we see all of the past hosts appearing, which I have to go through frame by frame because there's some like Starfleet uniform stuff in there that I want to get a close look at. Some really cool stuff. So that scene had me emotional for sure.
Oh yeah, that was when Dave handed me a tissue. Because before there was crying, but it was contained to a few tears, and then with that one it was like so it was like the ugly crying, the sobbing. So
yeah,
and that's fine. I'm prepared for it. I should just start every Discovery episode with a tissue, because I am 4 for 4 for crying in season 3. So
yeah. Well, I mean, if any episode this season so far has made anyone cry, it seems to be this one. Like for a lot of people out there, I've been seeing that feedback. For me, like, yeah, I was getting a little emotional when we saw all the hosts appearing, and then when Gray steps out from behind and steps forward, that was incredibly emotional.
yeah, getting emotional thinking about it.
Excellent. But yeah, incredible performances by both Ian Alexander and Blue Del Barrio, and like I said, marking that turning point for her character, or for the character of Adira. Just wonderful. And Culber's instincts of having Burnham go along, I think, were right on the money.
Absolutely.
I love Culber. I don't know that he would have been as effective with Adira in that moment as Burnham was, and Culber absolutely sees what is needed for her.
He does, and obviously I think he would have not been as good at getting out of that ambush as Michael was. So the reason for her going was not only as someone to encourage her, but also someone to protect her.
Yeah.
Which Hugh may not have been the best choice for the protection part.
For sure. So yeah, let's stick with Adira's story, I guess, for now. They now have the memories of all of the past hosts, and she gets asked for all of her names. And,
speak your names.
Yeah, that was really cool. And at the very end of the episode, we see that Gray is still with her in some form. And Bruce had a really good point when we were talking about this on the podcast, which will come out on Monday, that it seems to be a thing in Star Trek Discovery that there are people that a certain character can see and others can't. So we need a scene, I think, of Gray and May Ahern together chatting.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, exactly. Or at least, and this was Bruce's idea, and I like it, that could be an interesting connection point between Adira and Tilly if this comes to light, if this comes out. And maybe Adira's and I'm projecting, I have no idea what this would look like, but maybe they're feeling self-conscious about it and embarrassed, and Tilly could be, this has happened to me, blah, blah, not the same situation, but you're not crazy, you're not, that sort of thing. So I think, I don't know, there's some neat connection points there.
I feel... Okay, I'll be honest. I've seen episodes 5 and 6, and I cannot comment on certain things. But my personal feeling at the end of episode 4, because there were people who were like, oh no, she was just communicating with the memory of Gray. And I'm like, no, she was not. It's never been like this. We have never seen this before in a Trill host and their symbiont. Never. And I don't know if this has something to do with the fact that she's a human host and there are different things going on there, or if it's the strength of their bond, the fact that they knew each other before and were, in love. I don't know. But he's not just memory. He is interacting with the environment. He is interacting with her. It's something else. I can't say what. I don't know. But I think we're in uncharted waters when it comes to Trill and symbiont behavior.
Mm-hmm. I will say the one thing it reminded me of, very similar to, was the season 7 DS9 episode Field of Fire, where Ezri performs a ceremony which brings forth Duran, and she sees him walking around with her while she solves a murder case. And our speculation, just wild speculation, was that whatever physiological process allows that to happen when this ceremony is performed is something that's happening without Adira's immediate trying to make it happen through this thing, because lack of training, the fact that she's human, etc., etc., etc. It could be something similar to that, but just through a different means or something like that. So, but
well, it's not something that Gray knew anything about, and it's apparently not something that any of the other hosts knew anything about, which is, again, why I say it's something that's never been seen before. Because she asks Gray, how are you here? And he says, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm loving seeing what happens there.
Yeah, definitely interested to find that out for sure. Marg, thank you so much, and we love you too. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much for everything, and yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there anything else from this side of the story that we want to explore that hasn't been brought up yet?
I loved the quilt.
Yes.
That Adira made Gray.
Yeah.
And how self-conscious she was after Gray had gotten the tall symbiont. Sorry, having trouble speaking English today.
It's all good.
But because she was, he said he would be himself, but he was himself and just more himself. And she was trying to figure out a way to connect with this person now, this person that she knew, and now she feels like she doesn't know. And that was heartbreaking. And I love how he calls her out on her sulking, and just, that's just a great relationship between those two. And yes, they're obviously very young, but at the same time, they're orphans. And when you're an orphan and you find anyone that you get on well with and can tolerate over an extended period of time, you stick together and you help each other, and if that turns into a love story, great. If it doesn't, fine. Theirs turned into a love story. And just her making that quilt that was their journey together, again, crying during that. And also that she's covering him up with that.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah,
that part really got to me as well. Especially, like you said, the using it to cover him. That was incredible. Very moving for sure. Yeah. Not sure what else to say about this part of the episode, other than just really curious to see where this ongoing relationship goes. I was initially surprised watching the episode that Gray was a character who was killed off, but not really by the time we get to the end. So that's interesting for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing that my husband Dave brought up that I don't have a firm answer for, and I don't think anyone else does. When Adira gets pulled down into the pool and Michael wades in after her, Adira is gone. She is not in the pool. Where is she? Where does Michael go?
Yeah.
Where are they?
Yeah. Now, in my immediate thought, and this is non-canon and stuff, but in the novels, very similarly, they go down into the pools, and they actually the bottom isn't right there, but in this episode we can see she's wading out. But in the novels, they get pulled down kilometers, and maybe not kilometers, that seems crazy for pressure, but as the further down they went, the bigger and bigger the symbionts got. And like there was like whale-sized ones near the bottom that had like millions of years of memories. They were that old or something. It was really crazy, but really cool. So I think that was the Worlds of Deep Space Nine Trill novella. So yeah. So different than what they did here. But I was initially thinking when they were going deep down, I was like, oh, but not quite.
Yeah, the best that I could come up with was that it was some kind of transdimensional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know where they were. They weren't in water.
Yeah.
And there were, I don't need it explained to me, but I just find it curious.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering if all of the stuff that took place, like how long they were down there, was it that long that perceptually they were down there, or did like Michael disappear and then 5 seconds later they pop up and they're pulling them out? Like that's what I wondered.
I feel like it's longer. I feel like they were starting to think they were not going to see either one of them again, because the relief when they pop back up is palpable.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it was probably in real time.
Okay.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, barring any other evidence, I have no idea. So sure.
Yeah, I know.
There's no reason to think it wasn't. So
it's just headcanon at this point because nothing has been confirmed. So yeah, we can go with that.
So the other side of the story, another really emotional part of the story for different reasons, but also kind of for the same reasons, connection and that kind of thing. There's definitely a theme running through this episode. Also an interesting theme running through this episode, especially with this half of the story with regards to some of the real world things that have been happening this week that I thought was some interesting synchronicities, let me say. We've got a crew that's coming apart at the seams a little bit, most especially shown through Kayla Detmer, for one, and also through Tilly and Stamets and some of the stuff they're going through. And we're getting some insights into, of course, why they've been acting the way they've been acting. You know, they've been through a lot. As far as Georgiou goes, why is she acting the way she's acting? Because she's Georgiou. She's just Georgiou.
Yeah.
We'll talk about her because I've got some questions about her and what's going on with her as well. But so we have, Stamets obviously still reeling from his injury and recovery, which wasn't a complete recovery, obviously. Kayla, we've been seeing something's been wrong with her for a couple episodes now. She's been definitely not doing well. And Saru queries the computer and asks for suggestions about how he might help the crew come together beyond the standard things like a focus on duty and routine and reducing dairy intake, which
yoga.
I saw somebody in the comments had an issue with that. Yoga, looking for something different. Now we see something flash up on the screen behind Saru, which would appear to be that sphere from season 2. The sphere data, of course, is still in the ship's computer. And we hear a very familiar voice the computer kind of morphs into. So we're seeing, I feel like, pretty obviously the birth or the continued evolution of what will presumably become Zora at some point as seen in the Short Treks episode Calypso.
Yeah, basically when that happened, Dave and I looked at each other and went, Zora.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting how it flips back and forth. Like it's all Zora, and then it's somewhere in the middle, and then it's the original Discovery computer voice, and it keeps going back and forth. Like it's not fully formed yet. It's just the beginning of it. So yeah, and Saru is pretty chill for the fact that his computer is going a little wonky, but I think he's already figuring out what's going on, which we actually get his explanation of that later. So
Absolutely.
he's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah. And so he's more focused on, I got to help my crew. Okay, so an artificial intelligence is melded with our computer. I can deal with that another day. Got bigger problems right now.
Now that I think about it, and I didn't really think about it during the episode, but if I were Saru, I'd maybe be a little bit more worried because of the last time an artificial intelligence arose.
Yeah, but it was the sphere data, and it had already demonstrated its will to survive, and also its will to protect the crew.
I know.
So,
I'm just saying this would be something in the back of my mind where I'd be like,
well, it might be in the back of his mind. You don't know.
Absolutely.
You don't know everything that Saru is doing. I'm going to take this moment to express something that I didn't really think about, but really honestly should have before now. And it occurred to me actually earlier in the week, but this is the first Star Trek show where we have our ship's captain who is not human. First non-human captain.
Yep, absolutely.
So, and I don't think we're even thinking about it because we're just like the whole time, yeah, it's Saru. It's gonna be Saru. It should be Saru. And now it's Saru. And we're not even thinking about how monumental that is for the show.
Oh,
and
yeah,
for
no,
Star Trek in general.
Yeah, like I was all about that last week. Like as far as, it's not a real life barrier we're breaking, I guess, but it's definitely something that's never been done that I really appreciated for sure. Absolutely. And the fact that it's Saru, I think, is really cool as well, because at the start of the series, not necessarily the alien you think would be the one to break that barrier. I do also note that the lack of his fear response is something that I think is making him be kind of chill about this whole AI computer thing. Like Saru of season 1, early season 2 would have a very different reaction, I think. And I think when the voice started to change, if he still had them, his threat ganglia might have popped out just for a second, or something.
Instead, he's more just like curious. It's like, computer.
I want to see the results of that level 10 diagnostic you ordered,
Right? Well, she basically said, I'm fully functional, So she did that in a 0.2 of a second and said she was fine.
Yeah. So, she suggests that he give the crew a night off, set the ship on auto navigation, and have a dinner with the senior staff. And we get to see that dinner play out. Not probably the way Saru was hoping. And this scene was hard to watch. There were parts where, I was definitely very uncomfortable. Obviously, intentionally so. Detmer, for example, probably the most we've seen the character speak outside of a bridge scene, I think,
Indeed.
and it's disturbing, and people are rightfully kind of disturbed by what she's saying. But at the same time, like when Stamets comes back at her, when she's doing this haiku about Stamets' blood on the sickbay floor, and Stamets comes back with, don't make light of my injury and all this stuff. And she genuinely is like, I didn't mean to. Like, she didn't even realize where she was in her headspace at that moment, which felt familiar somehow. Like, I feel like I've seen that sort of PTSD express itself in similar ways in people. And it was very disturbing.
It is. It is. And as someone who has dealt with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, if you don't know what PTSD stands for, you probably should. her reactions are very in line with what happens when you start to crack, because there's still such a stigma about admitting that you're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a big problem with that in our current society. Even as advanced as we think we are, it's somehow still taboo to say, you're not okay. And the thing is, it's okay to not be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this on Infinite Trek earlier today. You are not ashamed to go to a doctor to fix a broken bone. Do not be ashamed to go to a doctor to fix your broken brain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, Detmer's whole arc through this story, through to her admitting to Culber at the end that she's not okay, that is such a huge step for a lot of people, for most people, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the acknowledgement that she's a pilot and pilots are macho too. I liked that little bit there, because there's certain people in our society, certain occupations, certain gender expressions, certain et cetera, whatever label you want to put people in, or people put themselves in, that's not okay, or from their perception that's not okay, or from others' perceptions that's not okay, and that's something that needs to be pushed against.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated that. I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, and I think it also demonstrates that, Kayla says it was very hard for her to admit, which means it takes great strength to admit that you're not okay. It is not showing weakness. It is showing strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Great comment here too. I'd hate to be at a party where I had to think of a haiku on demand, but it's something I'd come to expect of the Disco Bridge crew between this and the Auto Antonym game. I was kind of flashing back to the Auto Antonym game as well.
Mm-hmm.
In that scene. I thought that was great. How does Culber describe the crew? Overachievers, I think, and it's very much the case. You get a group of people together with this much brain power, that sort of thing's going to happen, and that's fun to see for sure, even though it took a dark turn, as we said. So Stamets and Tilly, of course, as well. We had an earlier scene with them where Saru ordered Stamets to resume his research into a non-humanoid, non-life form navigational interface. Tilly, of course, we know, has been studying the dark matter possibilities since, I think, like episode 2 or 3 of season 2, and comes to Stamets with that, and they have it out because Stamets feels she's wasting her time and is not appreciating her contributions there. And that comes out at the dinner as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tilly just kind of breaks into everybody else's bickering and says, "Do you think you got a corner on pain?"
Mm-hmm.
And she makes some very good points, and she doesn't even make it about herself. She makes it about everyone. We're all going through this, and the only way we're going to get through this is together. So the thing is that I know that this scene was uncomfortable and ended in a way that was not pleasurable in any way, but I think that this was the catalyst for progress.
Absolutely.
That you kind of have to break down so that okay, I'm broken and I need to fix myself. I need to work on this. I can't just keep pushing it down, because the longer you push it down, the worse it's going to get. And they are so lucky that all of this came out like it did when it did, because can you imagine if they were suppressing this through the entire season, how ugly that could have gotten?
Yeah, or like in the middle of a crisis or something like that. And
exactly.
Like we kind of almost saw that, I think, when the Discovery was trying to lift off in that episode. And I think if Burnham hadn't shown up when she did, regardless of what the ice was doing and all of that, I think
Yeah.
Kayla was completely falling apart at that moment. And yeah, if this had happened someplace else, not this, friendly dinner, that could have been disastrous. And as Tilly says, this is just a Tuesday in her family. So,
I've been through a few family dinners like that when my mother's mother was still around. Mom, I know you're watching and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So that's, it's sad to see, but like you said, I think necessary. And like you said, it's a catalyst for some realizations for Kayla, for other people, for Tilly and Stamets, because we get that wonderful scene where Stamets comes to Tilly and says, I've not made you aware of how much I value your input, and what I do couldn't be done without all of your hard work. And she says, I knew you. And he says, well, I never said it, and I should have, and that's my fault. And that was beautiful, brilliant. And more people need to take that time, I think, to appreciate the people around them, myself included. I need to remember to take more time to do that. Whether it's a coworker or a member of your family, they say familiarity breeds contempt, right? Like the more time you spend with someone, the less time you spend telling them that you appreciate them sometimes. And I think that should happen. And then all the way down to just like people in our society that I think get stepped on so much. I'm gonna do a little bit of a current events thing right now. The city in which I live passed a bylaw a couple months back that if COVID cases reach a certain threshold in the city and county, a mandatory mask bylaw would be instituted. That has happened. We've passed that threshold. Mandatory mask bylaw is in effect for indoor spaces and all this stuff. And the number of like 16 and 17-year-olds whose only job is to stand by the door of a store or something and tell people to that they have to wear a mask inside. The number of times I see people treating them like absolute garbage and being terrible human beings. I don't understand the mindset that leads you to treat anybody like that, let alone somebody with inherently less power than most people around them. And it makes me see red, and I try to be as appreciative to those people as I can. But I also see how much they're hurt by it, that sometimes they don't even, they're past the point of even being able to respond to that,
Yeah.
and it's awful. And I don't know what else to, if I see it happening, call it out. But beyond that, to see people's spirits crushed because somebody decides to be selfish and blame somebody for something that is, anyway, I'm gonna start steaming if I keep talking.
You have just described the experience of every retail worker on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because the minute you're on the other side of that counter, you are no longer human.
Yeah.
You don't have any rights. You don't have hopes or dreams or life or anything. You are there to be a punching bag.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this from experience.
Yeah, and me too. I mean, I've been retail. It's been a while, but I remember that. But it just, like, this particular issue seems to have been magnified 100 times, and it's very frustrating. So, like, just to see that appreciation between two human beings and see that modeled on a show like Star Trek might make some people, probably the people that don't need to hear it yet, take that into account and take that to heart. There's some interesting commentary on leadership in this episode that I think resonates this week, especially. The idea of Saru as a leader and bringing people together and creating connections, and creating those moments where people can breathe and kind come together as a community, I think, is something, like I said, resonates a lot this week in how that is similar to some people and very different from other people. You know, and then the other thing that really resonated for me this week, just thanks to the use of the language, was when Saru was talking about everyone volunteering to come to the future. And he said, each of you voted. And it was like each of them was like a little prayer. And boy, talk about that resonating this week, right?
Once again, crying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's probably about as political as I'm going to get. I don't know, for better or for worse. Is there anything in this that I haven't touched on that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's... The episode starts in a way that we've never seen before. We have Culber doing a log.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically is the connective tissue through everything that goes on in this episode, both with Adira and with the crew. And he just presents himself as so empathetic and open, concerned, wanting the best for everyone. And when he comes to Saru and he says, everyone's physically fine, and Saru immediately picks up on, you didn't say healthy. And Hugh just lays it all out. He's like, there's no way we could be okay. We're not okay. And we're fracturing. He lays it out. And Saru, being the good leader that he is immediately on that and is going to take action. Because the well-being of his crew is the most important thing to him. So those two things working together. And then Culber continues to just do his little thing throughout the episode and sow these little seeds to the point where you have that marvelous scene where Kayla finally admits that she is not okay and how hard it was to admit that.
Mm-hmm.
And that, she wants to take him up on that talk. And I also feel a little bit vindicated because I said it wasn't her implant or control or anything else. But I just
feel better.
I feel so much better. I do feel so much better. I just got it out and now I don't have to say it again. But he was just so wonderful in this episode. Just that his stuff alone just makes me he's just brilliant. He's just brilliant every second that he's on screen. His interplay with Michael when he is convincing her to be the one to accompany Adira, and he tells her she's a responsibility hoarder.
That was lovely.
And she's just like, yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So he was miraculous in this episode. And I love that he got to be so much a part of it. And maybe he wasn't front and center all the time, but he's connected to everything that happens in this episode. And it was just a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, it's funny because, like I said, so much of this episode is about connections, and Culber is the connection through it, like you just said. That's really cool. I want to call out the direction of this episode. Honolly Culpepper, amazing job directing this episode, and I want to thank Bruce again for pointing this one out. That scene where Kayla is talking to Culber. And I don't think we've seen a shot or a scene really framed this way before, where it's in the doorway of the sick bay in the corridor. Star Trek is usually very, you're in, you're out, that kind of thing, but they're leaning against the frame of the door. And there's just something about, symbolically being halfway to okay, like part way into the sick bay, but not quite, she's taking just that first step. Maybe reading too much into it, but I honestly, I know several filmmakers and nothing is done on accidentally.
Nothing's accidental. No, everything is done to properly tell the story. So it's absolutely purposeful. Absolutely.
Definitely. One thing we haven't talked about, of course, is this this final screening of this film in the shuttle bay for the crew. That, you know, as Saru says, it wasn't me. I didn't plan this. This was all. We're going to say Zora, even though she's not Zora yet. She's not called Zora, but the ship's computer, the sphere data, has, you know, orchestrated this as, you know, this relief moment for the crew. And what a lovely scene. I thought that was really great.
It was. There were people, I think, who were questioning, why didn't you go with Charlie Chaplin? Why Buster Keaton? And it's because it's physical comedy. It doesn't require any dialogue for you to understand what's going on. It's something where you don't have to think too hard. You just have to react. And so it's like a distraction, but it's also something that they have no experience with. We have to think about this from a perspective of a civilization hundreds of years from now, about what they know about and what they respond to. And they've never seen anything like Buster Keaton. So of course it's going to just be this complete novelty to them.
Yeah.
And they were just enjoying it. They were just letting off steam and enjoying something, which was so necessary.
Yeah.
And it filled up the room.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just the laughter of everyone in that room, just hearing that, and I absolutely think, yeah, Buster Keaton was absolutely the right call there. The physical humor, I thought that was perfect. Thank you, Marg. Apparently, we're rocking it, and Brandy is so luminous. Absolutely agree. Thank you so much. It's really sweet.
Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you.
One thing we haven't talked about yet.
I know where you're going with this.
Philippa Georgiou. What is she up to? What is going? Okay. So we had the Linus thing from a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
Which, you know, we're like, oh, what was that about? Oh, I guess she needed his eyesight to see and escape and get into the. But now, if you're watching carefully in this episode, you know, he pulls out her chair at the dinner and he hands her the popcorn at the movie. And there's these very small interactions that I'm really curious about. That, and I also, ever since Calypso, have wanted the Discovery branded popcorn.
And we got it, baby. We got it.
No, I mean, like, I want it.
Oh, no. I bet we're going to have it. Wait, it'll show up on the Star Trek store. You just wait.
I bet.
It'll show up. There'll be tricorders, there'll be hypo sprays, there'll be popcorn buckets. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it's true.
Yeah.
So
Suzanne Williamson, Georgiou, and Linus.
Well, this question has been presented to me more than once.
I would imagine.
And so my personal feeling is there something going on? I do think there's something going on. What it is, I couldn't say. You know, if she wants to have a tumble, of course she could have it with she could, you know, trick somebody or force somebody into it. But I don't think that is her goal with Linus. I think she just might genuinely like Linus. I know that sounds like a novel thing. And of course, she's not actually going to show it if she can help it, because she doesn't have vulnerabilities, you know.
No.
But, you know, if they got together, of course, then I just start thinking of the things like, how would that physically work? I mean, he was hatched. He, you know, so his species lays eggs, probably in a nest of some kind. And, you know, it seems like the eggs might be fertilized externally. So I don't really know how all of that works. And there's that part of my brain that's just going, so where is all the stuff? You know, where is it all located? Because we know so little about saurians.
Yeah, I mean,
so little.
I didn't go into this live stream expecting to say the word cloaca, but that's where we are.
Yeah, Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, I'm not even thinking about it in a dirty sense. I'm just
No,
curious to how it all works. I want to know more about Saurians and, how they do things and stuff. I just want to
of
know.
course.
Just curious.
Who wouldn't want to know?
So, yeah.
There are other big questions, though,
Yes.
that need to be raised with regards to this, such as raised by TJ here, who says, what will be the official name of this power couple? Georginus?
No, I already have it.
Okay.
Linus.
Linus. I like it. I like it.
That was not mine. That's Aaron Harvey's.
Okay. Linus.
I've seen a lot of them, but it's Linus.
Manippa? Yeah.
Oh boy. Wow. Actually, that might be even better.
Marg asks, what was that word? I missed it. That word would be cloaca.
Cloaca. Yeah. Cloaca.
Yep. That's, yeah. I'll just leave it there.
Yep. Look it up.
If it's anything, I like earth lizards. That's all I'm saying. Anyway. Wow. Like I said, I wasn't expecting that to go there, but
it was my fault. I take full responsibility, but these are the things that I think about.
I appreciate it for sure. And we've got the spelling there, thanks to TJ as well. So
yep.
There you are.
Pretty much like it sounds.
Yep, absolutely. Is there anything we haven't talked about that needs talking about, I think? So maybe final thoughts, ratings?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, nothing special. Like Adira's the future of the Trill. So that's...
not a big deal.
Not a big deal. Just something to mention in passing.
I did like how easily they let her get away. And I mean, they're not going to hold her there. She's got agency and stuff, but I thought maybe they would make an argument, but I think they realized that no, she's got a thing she needs to do first. And they're not going to convince her. But I thought that was interesting that, like, okay, you go with Discovery then. That's what you need to do. Just is an interesting choice to have that with no argument. I thought was pretty cool.
Well, yeah, I think they understand now that Adira can communicate with the symbiont, and that they trust. They don't know Adira as well as they know the symbiont. So, but they trust the symbiont, and if the symbiont is okay with it, then they're fine with it. So, who are they to hold him back?
Absolutely. I did find it interesting. We didn't get any numbers as far as like how many Trill are left and how many joinable Trill are left, which is
not enough.
Spoiler alert for Deep Space Nine. If you haven't watched all the way through, the number of Trill who can successfully join with symbionts is actually much higher than the government lets the people believe. And it's kind of too bad that now they're in a position that they've lost so many people who are capable of joining. It's kind of like actually more people can than they're aware of. So I wonder if that's based on like the old belief, or if like even with the new belief, they're not sure. I don't know.
It feels like they were just kind of stuck in the way of doing things the way they've always been done.
That's the impression I got as well.
And it took Guardian Z coloring outside the lines to, prove that they did have a future. And they even say that they even intimate that maybe they'll join the Federation once it gets back on its feet.
I thought that was pretty cool. That was a great line as well. We'll discuss a joining of a different kind or something. I thought that was really cool. Absolutely. So yeah, if you want to give your final thoughts and a rating, and folks in the chat, if you want to throw up your ratings for this episode as well, love to see. So
Yeah. Okay. My final thoughts. This one's a big tearjerker in the best way. And it's so important to remind us, you know, you have to think about it. You're still shopping trips.
that was
That's
funny.
You have to think about Discovery Season 3 was not supposed to be happening at this time. It was supposed to be happening earlier in the year. And this episode comes along at a time where here in America, we're going to have Thanksgiving in less than 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very interesting that these things are happening. It's almost as if the universe was like, no, this needs to hold on for a little bit so that it can be released at this time where everybody's just going to go, oh, when they watch it, because that's what's happening. It is so eerily prescient for the things that we're going through and have been through. And I don't know that it would have landed like this if it had come out earlier when it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Weird,
That's
but yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
So I'm loving this season. I am loving the new characters. I am loving being in the future. I'm loving not knowing what's going to happen. And I enjoy some speculation, but most of all, I'm just waiting to see the rest of the story. I am ready to see what story they're going to tell me. And I have faith that it's just going to keep being tearjerker for me. So I feel the way about this episode, the way that everyone feels about when Stamets and Detmer hugged at movie night, at Enterprise movie night.
Yeah.
Complete with the person who's acting like they're not having a good time, but secretly are, Georgiou.
Yeah. Yeah. I have nothing but good things to say about this episode. Made me very emotional. I think, like you said, it comes at a very appropriate time for a lot of things that people are feeling, a lot of things that people have been going through. I feel like a lot of the things I appreciate about this episode, what it's saying about pain and connection, I think an appropriate time for this episode is pretty much any time in 2020. Like I feel like a lot of this needs to be taken to heart by people and seen and listened to, myself included. I think it reminded me of some things that I sometimes forget about. That final scene with Detmer and Culber is one that I'm going to probably rewatch a lot, and just a lot of those emotions there, I think, are very valuable, and a lot of those ideas are very useful. So, yeah, I have to give this episode one feeling of absolute delight at hearing the voice of Zora, which I experienced while watching this episode. So, kind of a meta rating there, I guess, but
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess, Brandy, when you're not here live with us, where can people follow you online to see all the things that you do?
Like 50 million places. You can, if you don't want to listen to the long list, you can just go to Brandywine12 on Twitter. Brandy was an I, 12 is a number, to find out the things I'm doing. I do 3 podcasts on Holosuite Media about Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Strange New Worlds coming in the future, and also Discovery. And so you can find the Vedic Assembly, Boldly Go, and What the Future Holds there. I do a show with my husband called the Dark Corner Podcast, where we talk about nerdy stuff from a darker perspective. I do a solo podcast called Headcanon, which just is a weird, whacked out trip through my brain, very stream of consciousness. And you would think that I'm drunk, but I'm not. And this is, it's, my brain is crazy at the best of times, so I'm not going to add alcohol to that. And also I do another live show that's Infinite Trek with my friend Aaron Harvey, that is on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, which is on the Twitch It's on the Twitch, like the old people would say. It's on the Twitch, and you can find that on the Outpost 13 channel, and we have a great time having our discussions there as well. So join us there.
Excellent.
What about you, Dan? What about you, Dan? What about you, Dan?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Kertrats. That's Kertrats. You can find me on this channel here talking about Star Trek. Didn't do much this week. I was a bit stressed and took a few days off, which means now I have a bunch of videos to catch up on. So look forward to those. You can also find me and Bruce Gibson on the Positively Trek podcast. 2 episodes, of course, coming out on Monday and Tuesday. We've got a review of this episode and our flagship show, both of those featuring a YouTuber you might have heard of by the name of Ketwalski. He's joined us for those. Really excited. And then on Friday, we've got our book club episode for the autobiography of Catherine Janeway with special guest Una McCormick, who edited that book. Of course, it was written by Catherine Janeway herself, as it is an autobiography. So
exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week for, and I usually have it up and I can't remember off the top of my head. Brandy?
Die Trying.
Great. See you then.